Hello, world. Welcome to Speed Strength Show. I'm Tommy.
And I'm Christian.
And I'm Cole. What food, once it's prepared, is wasted the most? Like what do you think people throw out the most once they actually make the food?
Oh, I, my first instinct is like an animal because I feel like a lot of people just extract it for the meat, but then everything else just gets tossed away when you could actually probably still do a lot of things with all the other stuff.
True. I was thinking more like, for example, this came about because my wife drinks coffee, and there's a lot of times like she'll drink a half a cup of coffee and it's sitting on the counter, so you throw it away. And I'm like, man, coffee, the most wasted, products that we have. And so we discussed it a little bit, and it's like, but if you think about like French fries at a restaurant, like those things get wasted all the time. So anyway, that's kind of where I was going, like from a
Oh,
from
like
a like
food that gets thrown out the most.
yeah, like what food gets like, you know, do people like eat a little bit of or order and not eat, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's the thing that someone doesn't eat when they go out to a restaurant or cook stuff or things like that. I see what you're saying.
Does anyone eat the spiced or pickled ginger that comes with every dish in an Asian restaurant? Does anyone eat that?
I'm not gonna lie, Tommy. I'm the guy who that's one of my favorite parts about getting sushi is the pickled ginger.
Actually,
Dude,
because I feel like if I go to an Asian restaurant, that's like the plate comes in, I'm like, don't need this.
no, so I'm the guy who's pulling the ginger off every single person's plate when we're out for sushi or something. Love it. Favorite part.
Okay, so I guess that's not at least not between the three of us, because
Not for me.
Christian's eating all of it if we go out for dinner. Yeah, that's one of the things I think of, because Christian, I kid you not, you're the first person I've ever talked to that has actually said they eat that stuff.
I love ginger. One of my favorite things. I feel like it's got to be with the carbohydrate on the plate. Because you think when you go for dinner, like what do people do? Like the baked potato, the rice, maybe some of the noodles, or brunch. You know, it's always the hash browns are the last thing to get eaten. All that sense. Whoever that starchy kind of not flavorful thing on the plate is always what's not going to go.
Yeah, the rice is a good answer, because I feel like people always like they over prepare the amount of rice, the amount of like noodles, things like that. There's always like an abundance of it. Probably because it's the cheapest, so people are like, well, whatever. If I make an extra bit of rice and toss it, who cares? Or like, I don't know if that like. There's probably more rice wasted in the world than there is pickled ginger. So I don't know how to compare it. Like, I bet you 95% of the pickled ginger that's made probably gets thrown out. But by volume and weight, there's probably substantially more, like you said, rice, potatoes, noodles, other carbs like that get tossed.
When it's cheap, you know, no one's throwing with steak. That costs $30. Rice is practically free. You get a giant super store bag of rice for $5.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because even if you're at a restaurant, like if you don't finish, half your burger or something, like you box it up. But if all that's left is like the fries or the rice, you're not like, yeah, give me a little bag. I need to take this home. So
So were you thinking by like
I,
volume, Cole, or was there no
yeah,
metric? Like
I
I
was
guess this
almost
is
thinking, like, to me, it was almost like the number of times. Like if I go out to a restaurant and I don't eat, half of my burger, that's one time a burger got thrown out. And then if you do it like, so I was almost going by your pickled ginger example, but I
yeah,
mean,
because Christian's the only
could
guy on
be.
the planet who eats it.
Yeah, apparently.
You guys don't know what you're missing out, man. It's fantastic.
Like, I think I've tried it once, but other than that, like, I didn't. I was like, yeah, this is whatever. And
Yeah, there's even times like if one of my pieces of sushi like touches the ginger, it's like I don't even want that piece anymore. Like it's contaminated.
it's no good anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with that as my answer then. The pickled ginger, because I've never seen anyone eat it. But I have to go for sushi with Christian apparently, and
Okay, next Thursday at Langley, there, Tommy. We're gonna go for sushi, and I'll show you the ropes here. I'll teach you how the West Coasters eat sushi.
but then what if I like it again? Then we're gonna have to fight over it. We're gonna be ordering a plate of pickled ginger.
Well, then we're gonna do the part 2 with Cole, and we're gonna have to rehash this conversation out here.
Yeah.
And then it'll be 2-against-1 the other way, and then Cole will be like, "All right, I guess I'll have to try it." So, yeah. So, as everyone can probably hear, guest today. So we are joined by Cole Hergott, who is the head strength conditioning coach at Trinity Western University, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Cole, is located in Langley, BC.
It is. Yep.
Okay. I know Vancouver area. Everyone it's Vancouver, but it's technically in Langley. And this is you're going into your 4th year in the role, correct?
5th year going into so just finished the 4th. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're joined today by Cole. I'll let you introduce yourself, kind of tell a little bit of your story, but excited to have him on the show today. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. And we'll really end up diving into kind of think what has become a bit of your niche is the weight room culture. Sparta, as it's called, has a unique feel. I've never been there, but I already know it has a unique feel just from what is on social media, the things that you talk about, the things that you share. And it seems like the culture and the environment there is just on a different level, and is something created uniquely to you and the school and the athletes and the space that you've put together. So really excited to kind of dive into that today. But first, I mean, welcome to Cole, and yeah, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of the coaching journey and that you went on, and how you got to where you are right now at this very point in time.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm super excited to chat and share. And yeah, so I'm Cole Hergott, head strength coach at Trinity, which is located in Langley, which is, well, distance wise is a stone's throw from Vancouver, but driving it takes about an hour to get there because traffic sucks in Vancouver. But yeah, so it's in the heart of the Lower Mainland, small private Christian university. I've been here 5 years. I am originally actually from Saskatchewan, so middle of the country. Played a bunch of sports growing up. Ice hockey was my go-to. Pursuing the NHL, all those things, and then like 99.9% of us, the dream got crushed, and I had to think of something else to do. And at the time, I was actually playing hockey here at Trinity, so I came out here to play hockey and pursue my kinesiology degree. And at the end of my first year, in which I only played 2 games, my exit meeting with my coach didn't go so well. He basically told me that, hey, we probably don't have a spot for you next year, but you could be like a student strength coach or, those kind of things. Because at the time I really loved working out, and I was always in the weight room, always doing extra conditioning stuff. So the coach noticed that. So I left that meeting pretty upset. But obviously that kind of got my mind thinking about some stuff. I had a meeting with our current strength coach, or like the strength coach at the time, Andrew Hemming, and he, invited me to be a student intern and work with him. And so basically that's where it all started, and just fell in love with training, with strength and conditioning, with all that good stuff, as we all kind of do, and pursued that for, the next 3.5 years of my degree. Graduated, and then really wanted to do what I'm doing now. Wanted to pursue strength and conditioning at the university level. I'd looked into stuff in high school or like the pro setting, and it just didn't seem to fit, what I wanted and kind of what I perceived to be my skill set. And so I went and got my master's, or started my master's degree at UBC, University of British Columbia, which is in Vancouver. Got married, did all the good young Christian things, and then went then the job opened up here, threw my name in the hat. They picked me, and that was 5 years ago. So here we are.
And so you haven't left BC then in that time when you made the move from Sask to BC, and then there's always been something keeping you there, and now here you are.
Yeah. I moved. So I moved to Langley. I came back to Saskatchewan in the summer after my first year. And then after that, started dating my now wife. And yeah, my parents haven't seen me very much since. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the way it works.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it's a fun journey, and you got to experience a lot along the way, and now you're in a new province entirely. And you kind of mentioned before there was a previous S&C. I don't know much about the history of strength and conditioning at Trinity Western. Are you the second person that's done that, the third or fourth? Like, how long has that been kind of around or
Yeah.
present in I guess a formal role at the university?
Yeah. So Andrew Hemming started the strength and conditioning program. Well, when he retired was 19 years. So he probably in 2000, I think, like in the early 2000s, he started the strength and conditioning program. Was there. He had an assistant, Adrian Friesen, and she started probably in 2010 or so. So they kind of they were both part-time. So they were both on whatever, like 26-hour contracts kind of thing. And then Andrew Hemming stepped down. He had like 4 kids, was doing more teaching and stuff, and kind of stepped into that role. So then we hired Andrew Evans, who was a strength coach for Rugby Canada, and he got the job, and he was there for 2 years. So that was in my 4th year. So my senior year, I had Andrew Evans as the strength coach, and then Andrew Evans actually started, and turns out this is kind of why he got the job at Trinity, but he started our rugby program. So while he's the strength coach, he's kind of like behind the scenes starting up rugby. And then him and I like obviously chatted a lot. And so while I was at UBC, he kind of gave me the heads up of like, hey, just whenever I start this rugby program, that's going to open up the S&C position. So just like keep your ears open, like I'll let you know, because he knew that's kind of what I wanted to do. And then so he stayed, but he left that position. And then, but at the time there was still he was still only on that part-time contract, and Adrian Friesen was still on that part-time contract. So what they actually did was they combined those 2 roles and offered me the full-time position. So I am the first full-time strength and conditioning coach here, but I'm technically like the 3rd or even the 4th staff member.
So the reason I asked that was just to kind of get a bit of the history of it, because then you step into this role, and all of us have had experience stepping into new roles at new places, and you have to take on kind of the responsibilities as a leader. And I'm sure, Cole, that you saw a lot of good things in the time that you were there, and there were things that you wanted to keep in place. But then I'm sure there was something, not that it was bad or needed to be changed, but you are uniquely you. And so you're trying to find, okay, what do I keep and what do I start to shift in the opening stages of the new role. So I'm just curious, that kind of sets the stage for what was the first thing you wanted to start to implement, or the first big rock you wanted to put in place from a culture and community standpoint at Trinity Western.
So, wow, yeah, I remember there's so many things that I liked, so many things that I wanted to change. The biggest thing for me was structure. So before I started, basically strength coaches would come in, and this was my job as like an intern too. You'd show up at 7 a.m. and you'd stay till, well, I'd sit outside class, but there'd be other interns coming in, and you'd kind of just hang around and hope that athletes showed up. Like there was no team times, there was none of that. There's a couple teams that you knew would come in because their coaches were fully bought in. So our women's soccer team at the time, it was like, hey, they're going to come in twice this week. We have no idea when, but they're going to come in twice. And so you're kind of just hanging around. So there'd be sometimes I'd intern for like 3 hours in a row and see like 2 athletes. And then there'd be times where I'm there for like, a quick half-hour block after class, and there'd be like 30 athletes roll in. And what we ended up realizing is, all athletes kind of started to come at the same time. Like there's kind of a lull, I guess, in class times, like right before practice. So everyone would come and lift right before practice. But then we had to turn away some athletes because our weight room isn't very big. So you'd have athletes walk in and there'd be a full, like it'd just be packed. And so they're like, okay, I'm just going to go to the student fitness center, which of course doesn't help culture either. So I started in May of 2019. So I started in the summer. So I had a whole summer to kind of plan things out. And the first thing I did was I kept those open training times for that summer. I didn't want to change up too much, but whenever a group of athletes would come in, I'd be like, hey, let's go warm up together. Like I'd grab, there'd be like 3, maybe 4 of them. And I'd be like, hey, let's just go warm up together and let's just start. Or, like if somebody came and I knew someone else was going to come soon, I'd be like, hey, do you mind just waiting like 5 minutes just so that we can kind of start as a group? And of course, people at the time were like, what? Like, can I just like grab the skipping rope, do a couple reps and then just max out my squat? Like what's going on here? So started to implement that, and found a lot of success with that. Like just people really liking the structured warm up. We had, well, I would have to check the stats, but hopefully less injuries, better performance, those kind of things. But just from a culture standpoint, it just allowed it to be more structured right away. So then starting in that next fall, I did the worst thing in the entire world, which was try to create a schedule, like an hourly schedule based on everybody's class times. So I can't even remember how I did it. And I know my wife, who's more of an Excel whiz than I am, helped me. But basically, I got every athlete to send me their availability. And then I worked out, a schedule that, Tommy, you would come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9, on the men's track team. Christian, you would come in Tuesday, Thursday at 4 on, men's rugby, those kind of things. You'd be with a mixed group of athletes, but you would have those set times. And so that was kind of my first step, was like, okay, there needs to be some form of structure here so that it helps with my time, because I was recently married and those things. And it's like, I'm not going to stand here, especially in the evening, for an extra hour if nobody's going to show up anyway. And so it allowed me to, help my time, help, structure, my interns, but then also helped with accountability. And, it helped a million other things. But the biggest thing was, now I know you're supposed to come in. Like, Tommy, you're supposed to come in Monday at 9 instead of, oh, it's Friday. I guess I haven't seen Tommy this week. Oh, I guess he just decided not to come. So that was one of the biggest things. And it was an absolute nightmare to do it the first time. Like, I don't recommend doing it that way, but that's kind of what set the stage for kind of where we're at now, which is team times. So
how do you guys have it structured in its current state compared to what that your initial crack at scheduling the athletes in and scheduling the gym time was? I was like, I can imagine, 300 athletes trying to work through class schedules, what kind of nightmare that would be. So what is the current rendition then, Cole? What did that initial kind of, let's work with your class schedules, then transition into over the last 4 years that you've been with Trinity Western?
So this is where the pandemic actually was actually a blessing to me for that. So in that first year, I knew I always wanted to go to team training times, but going from open times to team times was a little bit of a jump. So that's where we kind of had that pit stop in the middle. And I got a lot of pushback because, as you know, people like to do their thing when they want to. And so having set times was difficult. But then the end of that year, so that was the spring of 2020 was the end of that year. So pandemic hits, things kind of get shut down. And then when we start up in the fall, we were allowed to lift, but you had to be within your pod, or you had to be within your team bubble. And so that was perfect. It was like, sweet, we have to do team times. Like, you're not allowed to lift with anybody else. And because things were online, there wasn't as much demand from a class standpoint. Like, you could always just watch your class later. So that way I basically created a structure with the teams based on their practice times. Some coaches, requested morning times, requested evening times, those kind of things. Anyway, came up with that schedule, and that's kind of what we've been doing, 3 years since. Is obviously it's changed a little bit since we've gone back in person. Like, I still, like right now, I'm actually going through creating this fall schedule, and I have the team time set, but now I'm dealing with the issues of, hey, Cole, like, I have class during that time, like, when other times can I lift? And so it's just kind of, mixing people around a little bit. But that's where, if one good thing came from the pandemic for me, that was it. That it kind of it forced me to do what I had to do, and we've been rolling that since.
No, I think there was a lot of people that probably took something from the pandemic, at least as much as it was a tough time for everybody and was probably filled with a lot of negatives. There was always, I think, one or two things that we were able to pull from. And it sounds like, Cole, in your case, it was the the forced adaptation that, kind of got you the schedule that you were looking for. And then you talked about, things were remote and then you were able to kind of come back in person. Is When did some of the things like the headmaster's challenge, the other things that you have going on in the weight room, was that a post pandemic once people were back in, or was that something that was started like very early on, or is that something before you even got there that you just continued? That was one thing I'd love to know, kind of the backstory on that, because I think that's really cool that you get to be competitive with your athletes in these kind of random games and challenges.
Yeah, there's there's so many things that yeah, just kind of every year it's just like, oh, let's just do this, and then some things stick and some don't. So basically the whole headmaster's challenge goes back to why it's the headmaster. So when I first started, so that first summer, I got my office, which I'm in now, and there's a little nameplate out that says like Cole Hergott and your job title. And so the facility manager at the time was just like, hey, like what do you want it to say? Like, are you like the director? Are you like, what's the thing? And one of my interns was in at the time, and she goes, oh, you should put something funny like you're the headmaster of Sparta. And so I emailed them that. I was like, hey, like put the headmaster of Sparta. And then dot dot dot. Actually, just kidding. Like, this is my first job. I'm young. Like, I want to be professional. Put head strength and conditioning coach. So I show up to work the next morning, and my nameplate says Cole Hergott, headmaster of Sparta.
Oh, no way.
And
That's
yeah, and
awesome.
and
That's
I go,
awesome.
okay, let's just roll with this a little bit. And ever since then, it's taken off. Like more than a handful of athletes like call me the headmaster. Like, that's my name, kind of thing, and it's super funny. Anyway, so then fast forward to the pandemic, and everybody's remote. I'm trying to keep people engaged, and obviously some people are better at that than others. And Colin McAuslin at Queens was actually doing some challenges with his athletes. I was just watching it on Instagram. I think the first one they had was like, how long can you hold an L sit or something like that. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a cool idea, just to get everybody in the department kind of doing the same stuff. And so I basically just started doing it that summer, just throwing it out in our emails, just saying, hey, this week's, headmaster's challenge. I can't even remember why I called it that, but anyway, headmaster's challenge is, this, and then submit your results. And so people would, how long, I think the first one was like, you'd be in a push-up position with a foam roller on your back, and then you have to go down to your forearms and back up. And it's like, how many times could you do that before the foam roller fell off? And then I would post that on Instagram, the top like 3 people, and then it's just kind of kept rolling, and I've people love it, and I keep doing it all year, and I get my interns to come up with ideas, and I've never done the same one twice, which I think it'd be cool to redo some ones to see if people actually got better. But yeah, they like they've ranged from, yeah, well, it's hard to describe them even with words, because some of them are just crazy, but they're safe. None of them you could get hurt doing. You're not going to have DOMs from doing them. It's just like a fun thing to just compete against, and that's really been, yeah, something that's kind of taken off. And we only do it for 4 weeks out of each semester. So I just pick basically a month out of each semester to do it, because I want people to enjoy it. So that week after we don't have it, everybody goes, oh, well, what's the challenge? How come you took it away? And I'm like, this is why I take it away, because I want you to want to do it. And then as soon as I bring it back, everybody loves it, and they get little stickers. If they were the first person on, or the top score on their team, they get a little sticker. And if they're the top male or top female, they get like a t-shirt or a water bottle, or just kind of an extra little prize. So it gets it gets pretty competitive, which is it's pretty fun.
Well, it's interesting you found that perfect balance of it's not so often that the monotony starts to kick in between, oh, every week there's going to be a new challenge for 8 months of the school semester. Or yeah, things like that. You do the first month, Cole?
Sort of. I try to pick. Oh, I'll usually pick kind of the middle of September to the middle of October, and then I'll pick the in the spring. I go the last 4 weeks before exams, so kind of the end of the season. So there's a little bit less stuff going on, and then it's like, hey, I know exams are coming, but come do something fun in Sparta.
Yeah, get away, come have some fun, go relax, and some of those things. Take along that culture standpoint then. a little bit off topic from what you just talked about, with the vast array of teams that you guys have in the university sector. For those that don't know, like Canadian sports, you can ever from hockey to soccer to curling to rugby in the university sector, and I don't know exactly what teams Trinity Western has. But how do you balance the integration of those teams? Because obviously soccer players culture would be very different from hockey, which would be very different from rugby, which would be very different from track and field. How do you integrate those pieces and kind of keep one clear identity of what Sparta is for you guys?
I think it comes down to just having a good sense of, well, for me, almost like coaching morals or coaching philosophy, and then not being afraid to branch out for those different sports. So for us, like, I don't care what sport or what athlete you are, you need to come on time, you need to wear your, your Spartan shirt, you need to work hard, ask questions, those kind of things. But I'm going to coach a men's basketball player very different than I am a women's soccer player. A women's soccer player, I know, and this is no shade against men's basketball, but I know a women's soccer player wants to get better, and I know they're there to improve, and I'm going to coach them a little bit harder. Whereas some of our men's basketball lifts during the year, it was like me just like being a bro, like just, hey, what's up? Yeah, no, yeah, let's lift. Let's, we warm up together, and then it's like, yeah, this is what we're doing. And I'm literally just joking around. Why? Because the culture for men's basketball isn't as strong from a weight room standpoint. And for me, I just need them to come in here. So they showed up wearing their stuff. They were on time. And now I just need to get them to want to come back. And so where I keep those same core values with every team I coach, but I'm not afraid to, almost be somebody different for each of those teams, because I know what they need. Like our men's hockey team, they come in when they're 21 years old. So they need something very different from our 18-year-old rugby players, even though both are kind of those, macho, like contact sports, like, hey, let's get after it. But men's hockey's been around the block a little bit. Like they need me to be more of a role model and a guide, as opposed to men's rugby is like, I actually need to coach them more. So I think that's kind of where it comes down to is setting your coaching philosophy, setting your kind of vision for the whole department, staying within that, but not being afraid to bounce back and forth between those walls and not just, be the same dude for every single person, because as we all know, everybody's different, and I don't think everybody should be coached the same way.
So building on, the fact that how many teams exactly do you have? I know you have a lot of teams.
We've got, so we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, like 13 if you count. So we just got disc golf this last year. So if you count that, we've got 13 teams. Yeah.
13. So like, I'm curious if did you find when you first got to the school, if there was a very like siloed culture between each of the teams in the weight room, in the sense that, like, did a lot of the teams know one another, or um was there kind of, oh, we know our team but we don't know the other teams? Because I've been at other places before when they have the team type schedule that you sometimes never interact and cross paths with athletes on other teams. And so was it a little bit like that when you first got there? And do you think that there has been a change in that for the better because of things like the Headmaster Challenge? Or I saw the other day you started putting up the Spartans and the pros. So now everybody can see like all the different people from different teams that have gone pro. Like, I'm sure I'm missing a few things, but the weight room, it seems like it's become a place where there's a togetherness. And do you think that those things have helped kind of, build bridges between the teams and the athletes that, otherwise wouldn't have much interaction?
I'm almost on the opposite side. So because when I came in, it was open gym times, athletes were like cross mingling all the time. So there was always just a random group of athletes in. And so when I came in, and obviously my first year is a little different because they were still mixing a bit, but when I moved more to team sessions, I knew I had to do something to avoid that, because same thing, I've seen especially schools that have like a football team, it's like the football team and then everybody else. So I didn't want, one of our teams or any of our teams to become like that. And so that's where, yeah, I've done things like we've got the Headmasters Challenge, the Spartans and the pros. I've got a whiteboard in Sparta where I do a poll question. So very similar to the question I opened with. where athletes get to vote on that. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback where, yeah, Sparta just feels like a family environment. Like it's just a safe place to go be a Spartan, not I'm a men's soccer player or I'm a men's volleyball player. It's, we're all in this together. We're all doing the same thing. We all get coached by Cole. We all, come lift in the same space. We don't have a men's volleyball weight room and a women's basketball weight room. It's everybody does the same stuff. And there is some mixing of teams. Like, as I mentioned earlier, if an athlete can't make their time, I don't just say tough luck. I move them into another time. So there is a little bit of that. And yeah, it'd be tough to say, like there might be less. There might be a little bit more of the siloed effect now compared to before I came, when it was just kind of athletes lifting whenever. But I think what we've done has really worked and really paid off from across the department. And being a smaller and even like a Christian school, like we do, we have chapel service, so there'll be like athlete chapel, or there's times where we have like whole department meetings and little things. So there's times where everybody kind of gets together and gets to know each other. So there's very rarely a time where an athlete would be in Sparta with another athlete and just like not talk to them or not know who they are. Like they, like, oh, hey, you're on the rugby team, right? Yeah. And then, they get chatting and whatnot. And we've actually had this summer alone, I think we've had 3 or 4 weddings where our Spartans have gotten married, and a couple of times it's like they got married to other Spartans on other teams. And a lot of times you trace that back and it's like, well, we met in the weight room. Like that's where we, crossed paths for the first time, like things like that. So I definitely say there's definitely a little bit of the siloed effect, especially once you get in season, like everybody's kind of got their blinders on. But I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to mix people and provide opportunity to have that kind of competition. Because even like with our headmasters challenge, so I write the names of the leader on each team, and a lot of times people don't know what the other person looks like from the other team. Like it's like, I don't know what Christian looks like, but I just know his score is better than mine. And every time I beat his score, he comes in and beats mine. So like this Christian guy, like, you know what I mean? There's kind of that too, where it's just people know of each other, which is the first step. And I think that just helps as well.
So in your facility, Cole, are you able to fit more than one team into the facility at a time? Or is it just volleyball is going to be in its only volleyball at that time? It's only basketball. Are you able to conglomerate 2 different teams or 3 different teams at one time with the facility?
If they're small teams, I can do 1.5/2. So the way it works is our weight room is 1,100 square feet, so not very big, 5 squat racks, and the huge saving grace for us is across the hall is our gymnasium. So, let's say at 10 a.m. I got a session, I'll take our team, we'll go into the gym as long as nobody's in there. We'll do our warm up and then come back into Sparta. So with 5 squat racks, I try to keep it at like 15 to 20 people, because then you've got, 3 to 4 people a rack. There are times where it does get way busier than that. Like I'll have like men's rugby sessions where sometimes there's like 25 or 30. But once again, the saving grace is the gym is right there. So, okay, we're not just front squatting and then you're sitting around waiting for the other person to finish, or we're not doing, I can't do a front squat with a chin up because our chin up bars are being used with the racks because you're doing front squats. So instead we do, we'll do a lot of like complex training or contrast training where we're doing, a front squat with a jump, or front squat even with like a mobility or a core exercise. So now half of the group is in the gym or in the hallway, or if it's nice, they go outside and do it. And that just cuts our numbers right in half. And I actually started doing that. Well, I always did that a little bit, but I had to do that more during the pandemic, where I was allowed to run sessions, but I could only have like 7 or 8 people in the weight room, groups of like 20. But I would say, hey, you got to partner up. So Tommy, Christian, you guys are partners. Christian, you're doing front squats. Tommy, you're in the gym doing some mobility exercise. And then Tommy, you got to wait till Christian comes out before you come in. And I kind of just stuck to that system because it worked really well and it allowed me to get more bodies in the weight room.
We're interesting seeing you do that because it violates a lot of what you learn in a textbook, kind of an undergrad, where it's okay, this is your gym, or you're going to do your warm up and you're going to do your jumps and your sprint stuff. then you do your heavy lifting, and then you do accessory, but you sort of juggle and shift and mix a little bit because facility-wise, you have to get people into the gym to get the training done. And it's interesting to see kind of how that flows in your guys' weight room in that sense.
Yeah, and this is something I tell my interns all the time because they learn things in the classroom and then they're like, hey, how come we do whatever? Because the world isn't like the textbooks. Like at the end of the day, yes, the textbook is correct, but my job is to get an adaptation. My job is to get these kids ready to perform. And so I understand that, it's better to squat before you do, chin ups or dumbbell bench or, whatever your philosophy is on that. But I have 2 women's soccer players in during a men's volleyball lift, and men's volleyball is and everybody's trying to squat. So okay, I go to those women's soccer players and say, hey, just start with the dumbbell bench, and then because men's volleyball is not using the benches, then when they're done their front squats and they move on to the bench stuff, their rows and whatever, then you guys go to your squats. And I know you might be a little bit fatigued, and you might not be able to hit your front squat as well, like whatever it might be. But once again, I'm not going to get women's soccer A to pair up with a 6'7" men's volleyball guy at the front squat, and B, I'm not going to get them just stand around for 25 minutes, wait till they finish, and then go. So it just comes down to logistics and trying to get it done. And one of the best pieces of advice that one of my colleagues told me was, you always have to think about optimal, not ideal. Like in this scenario, yes, it'd be awesome if we had a 6,000 square foot facility. It'd be awesome if we had a dietitian. It'd be awesome if we had this. That would be ideal. But this is what you've been given. What is optimal given that scenario? And so that's kind of the constraints I work within. And thankfully, it's, well, in my opinion, hasn't come back to bite me in the butt yet. So.
You mentioned that you have the interns. I know you have a pretty full staff of student help. I'm assuming most of them are from the kin department. I'm sure you have maybe some others from different departments that just have a passion for training and exercise. How do they fit into kind of the culture and the I'm going to call it the atmosphere of Sparta? Because to me, they would play an important role because of the time, the presence that they have in there. So are there aspects of working with your intern staff that are they allowed to participate in the headmasters challenge? Do they have sort of is there separate things you've done with them to establish a culture and togetherness with that staff? Is it done in conjunction with everything the athletes are doing? Is it a bit of both? Like, just be
Yeah,
curious to know your process with that.
yeah, the internship has morphed a little bit in the last few years because when I started, so our kin program, you have to get 3 leadership credit hours. So it's like 90 hours during your undergrad to get it. And so the issue with everything was then I would have, or the strength coaches before me, you basically have kin students walk up and say, hey, I'm going to do my internship with you. And then go, sweet, like free help. But with that, you kind of get people that aren't really in it, for the right reasons. They just want to get their credits. And so when I started like an application process. And so now I vet all my interns, they apply, we do an interview process, and then I accept my team. And so like this semester, I'm going to have 14 interns, which is the largest group I've had. Only one of those is a returning intern. So we're going to see how much I can put on her shoulders. But what I'm finding with the interns is I want to grow the internship. So I was one of those interns. And so I believe in that kind of process. But I think for them, creating a team for them is huge. The only issue I run into is probably 75% of them are already Spartan athletes. And those are the ones that are kin Spartans. They want to do their leadership credits. They love the weight room. So they're like, well, I'll hang out with Cole for an extra few hours a week, which is sweet. But then when it comes down to like little things like the headmasters challenge, it's like, well, you're already on like the women's volleyball part. My other interns, absolutely. If they beat me, they put their name up, instead of me under strength and conditioning. But what we do is we'll have monthly, well, depending on the group, we'll either do longer monthly pro team meetings, or we'll do like bi-weekly shorter ones, depending on people's schedule. But that's where everybody comes in and we, go over cueing certain exercises or coaching or we'll cover, like, we have force plates. So we go like, how do you use those? Like, what's the data look like? Our testing protocols. And those are all really good times for interns to interact together. And I've done like field trips, like we went out to Simon Fraser University and has a presentation from their strength coaches. We went to a physio clinic, just trying to broaden people's horizon. Because what I don't want is, I don't want 14 Cole Hergotts. I want everybody to be their own strength coach, and yes, I want them to learn from me, because I think what I'm doing is pretty good, and I'd be honored if people wanted to do what I do. But I think I want people to learn from more than just me, as I learn from more than just my strength coaches. But the issue is, because I have because I have so many, it's hard to have times where everybody's together, or when they're interning, like, I don't need 4 interns on the floor. I need like 1 with me, so that they don't get to interact with each other as much as I would like. So I'm trying to find times to do that. So, like, we'll do Christmas parties, or we'll do things like that. But it's I tell them that, like, they're an extension of me. Like, anything I do, they can do as far as coaching goes. And so when they're on the floor and they're helping run warm-ups and all those things, like, it's great. But there isn't quite that mystique around the internship yet. And I'm hoping this year, once again, with the biggest group I've had, that it starts to grow, because I want it to be a machine. And I'm competing against, UBC's got a really good internship program, SFU does. So, like, I want people to come to Trinity Western to intern, for me, because they want to be a strength coach, instead of, oh, I'm in my 4th year, I want to do physio and I haven't done my leadership credits yet, so I'll go hang out with Cole, because that's typically the kind of interns I get. I want it to be like 15, future S&Cs, and we're just crushing life. So
how do you set the learning expectations and learning objectives for your interns? Obviously, especially when you have so many, in terms of, you said 14 of them, how do you go about that process where it's establishing, hey, like, these are the expectations for the internship, this should be your learning objectives, how you should accomplish that, and lay a roadmap for them, sort of lay that road to Rome a bit? I've seen some practicums or internships where students are very much left to their own devices, and they're just sort of kind of living in limbo, and there's not much direction given to them to control their learning objectives or to go seek out information. They're not led down that road a little bit. So what's your process with the interns in terms of, guiding their path, or setting those learning objectives and expectations in that process to further the development while doing the internship?
yeah, that has also grown pretty much every year. So in my first year, I reached out to Steve Lidstone and chatted with him a lot, because he's kind of the guru of internship models. So I took a lot of stuff from him, and that's kind of where I got the, like, you need to vet your interns, like interview them and make them apply and those kind of things. So that's been super helpful. But I think one of the things for me is, right away I sat down that first summer and kind of wrote out, like, the objectives of the internship. What I want them to learn, what are what's the dress code, what's, like, just those simple things that all the interns should know. And then every year I've kind of grown it a little bit more, because when I was an intern, I was like asking my strength coaches, like, hey, what can I do more? Like, hey, can I help with programming? Like, I was always trying to do those things, I guess, and hence what led me to here. But I'm finding that not very many of my interns are like that. And if I don't tell them to do anything, like, they'll literally just stand there for every single session all semester and not say a single thing. So I've had to come up with ways to push people out of their comfort zone, which is actually me getting out of my comfort zone, is like telling people to be uncomfortable. Like, I'm a people pleaser. So it's like, hey, if you're good, let's just stay good. But I've had to learn to be like, hey, no, like, I actually need you to help me. And so what I've done is I kind of laid out a bunch of objectives, or things that I was noticing my interns were missing. So, like, you don't learn how to coach or cue in class. They go over programming, but they don't know how to actually apply it very well. Conditioning programming, we don't cover. Speed stuff, we don't do. And so I've started to accumulate some resources, and I have our basically curriculum that we have. So this past semester, or past year, once again, we had 1 Pro D meeting a month. So we ended up having like 9 meetings. And so every month we would just go over a new topic. So first one is coaching, cueing, and spotting. and then we go over like how to run a warm up, and then we do our testing, and it kind of aligns with what we're doing. So that testing one falls in November when we do our winter testing at the end of the month before they head off for Christmas break. And so I try to make it applicable, because otherwise if they learn it and then don't apply it for 6 months, then they're just going to forget it anyway. And then the second semester is pretty heavy on programming. And so I did that for the last few years and got some really good, like interns were learning a lot and they were really appreciative of that. But there was still a little bit missing from the, boots to the ground stuff. And so what I did this last year for the first time was I actually had assignments for my interns. Whereas before, like we have a team group chat like on WhatsApp, and I would send them articles and just like, hey, this is something that I read that was interesting. But now it's like, okay, like you need to read this. You need to read this and respond to this. You like in the first semester after we do our warm up Pro D, they all have to lead a warm up. And say you have to run a session. You don't have to do one ever again in your entire life if that was like absolutely terrifying for you. But I need you to know what it's like to have everybody staring at you, waiting for you to say something, and know what that's like to command a group that way. And then in the second semester, we go over programming for a couple of Pro D meetings, which I'm thinking of even doing more, because the amount of questions I get, like it's like, man, there's just so much, so much you could dive into with programming. So I keep it super simple with them. And then I get them to write, to pick a scenario, or pick I'm going to program for an 18-year-old freshman women's volleyball player, right before playoffs, whatever it is. And I get them to write just a 1 week program. Just give me like a 3-day, 1 week program, boom. And then I basically grill them on it. And then we kind of have good conversations that way. So that's the thing I've applied is a little bit of assignments, because otherwise, yeah, they can get lost, especially in the middle of the semester where, like you said, like I've got 300 plus athletes to worry about. And then if suddenly it's like, oh shoot, what about my 14 interns that have just been standing around? So what my envision for my internship moving forward is I want to retain more interns than just one, because what I would love is to have, let's say I still have 14 interns, but I've got 7 returning ones with 7 new ones. And now those returning ones basically each get paired with a new one. And now, yes, I'm overseeing it and doing the Pro D meetings, but now, Tommy, you don't come to me with your questions. You go to Christian, because Christian's a 2nd or 3rd year intern, and now he's kind of your boss. And then it gives Christian a little bit more responsibility. So I'm obviously not at that point yet, but that's kind of where I want it to go, because yeah, that makes it more sustainable for me, and it makes it more exciting for an intern to come back, because it gives them something more to do instead of I'm just going to stand there and lead warm-ups again.
Well, and I like that idea too, because when you're talking about, okay, you maybe only have one intern at a time who's on the floor with you doing whatever, there's almost this forced interaction between all the members of the group, right? So all of a sudden, if Christian and I are in your student staff, but Christian and I have separate times when we're on the floor coaching with you and helping with the teams, there are assignments, chats, meetings, kind of informal mentorships that are being formed that requires interaction amongst the staff, and like you said, could probably help create an aligned but separate culture from the culture you've created amongst the group of athletes. Because like you said, I think it's important that they have their kind of collective group and that it's aligned with what the athletes are doing. But like you said, in some ways is separate, because the role and the duty is a little bit different. So that's exciting to hear that you got 14 of them, and like you said, with 13 new members, hopefully, you have a few returning next year, and then you can start to, really carry forward some of that stuff.
Yeah, September is going to be busy trying to onboard them. But I mean, from the positive side is I haven't had to change that curriculum, because with only one returning intern, I kind of told them like, hey, just like you're going to learn the same things. But I've also told her like, hey, I might get you to lead like the warm up Pro D, or I might get you to do that. Whereas then I get to almost like trial out this mentorship, like, hey, how does a 2nd, 3rd year intern respond to these kind of things? Because she's a very keen student and intern and athlete. And so it's like, okay, if she fails at it, then I might not try it again. So yeah.
Christian, is there any other question you have?
I do have one, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. So yeah, university sector, 13 different teams, 300 plus athletes. Tommy and I's old mentor had a great quote. Michael Cook, he used to be at U of A, he's now with men's volleyball for Team Canada there. He had the quote of, at the university sector, we're making street sushi. We can't be sushi masters because the quantity of how much is coming in is just so vast. You can't make this perfect refined piece of sushi. I'm curious how your process is and how do you work through the problem of 350 athletes, 13 different teams. How do you balance the juggling act of individualized programs, individual needs, individual sport needs, but then also logistically manage your time and not have 350 different programs? So I'm always curious to hear people's solutions to that problem. So how do you work through that with your 13 different teams' goals to provide you the best possible product? Understand that there's going to be holes, there's going to be downfalls. It may not be exactly what someone else needs, but you're still going to get 80, 85, 90% of what you probably need.
That is a fantastic question. How do I do that? I think a lot of it just comes down to listening and learning and trying to understand each sport a little bit differently. So as every coach knows, if I were to look back at my programs from my first year to now, they'd be night and day different. When I started, they were when I first started, they were probably more specific than they should be because I needed to impress and we needed to do all this specific stuff. And then COVID hit and we basically all did the same stuff. And then now we've kind of leaned back to, okay, now we need to specialize a little bit more. But I think from a managing standpoint, I'm a big communication guy. So I send out way too many emails. I've actually gotten my email locked multiple times because they thought I was a scammer because I send an email to 350 people at one time and they're like, whoa, this is shady. So they've locked my email a couple times anyway. But the biggest thing is just making sure I'm communicating everything to the best of my ability, asking for feedback and questions so that if there is anything that I'm missing, that I get the opportunity to learn and change. And some athletes are really good at that. I've had some really good meetings with athletes who are just like, hey, like this is what I think we should be doing and this is why. And obviously I always listen to that. I'm always reaching out to coaches. But yeah, I'll send a weekly email every Friday saying, hey, this is what's coming down the pipe next week. These are some things we need to pay attention to. I send out usually an email middle of the week with like our tip of the week and just some information. I try to meet with our coaches, a couple times every semester and just see what they're seeing, on the court or the ice or the pitch or whatever it might be, anything that, we want to change. And then just trying to learn. So what I've started to do is every day I learn about not a new sport, but different sports. We've got our 13 sports. So, not 13 sports. So I guess it's only 7 sports. But basically every day of the week, I'll go on YouTube and look up, how to do a corner kick in soccer, or how to make a perfect tackle in rugby. Like just things like that allow me to have a better grasp of the sport. The most important thing for me is lingo. So I actually sound like I know what I'm talking about instead of just, I've made that mistake way too many times of being way too general when speaking. But then it also helps me understand programming. Oh, okay, if that's how we need to tackle, then maybe we need to strengthen, X muscle, or we need to work on this movement. And then it helps me have better conversations with athletes, which increases buy-in. And then it allows me to, maybe we need to be doing this from a conditioning standpoint, or we need to be, we don't need to be doing this because, rugby doesn't jump as much or whatever it might be. But from managing all those teams, I think it's just trying to spend time learning about each, prioritizing each, and not just, throwing your hands up going, well, I guess, this is too much for me. Everybody's just going to do the same program. I want to be like, I agree with Michael Cook's quote 100%, but to me, it's like, that doesn't mean I'm still not trying to make gourmet sushi. I'm still trying. I want to give men's rugby the best product. I want to give men's volleyball the best product. And that's where I knew coming into my first year, it wasn't going to be perfect. Obviously, I tried to make it and that didn't really work that well. But now I'm trying to refine my craft and realize, okay, what is going to make what we're doing better? Just a little bit. What is the one question I can ask this athlete? What feedback am I getting from them that's going to help me, make things better? Like I tried doing good mornings with our volleyball teams. Men's volleyball absolutely loved it. Women's volleyball destroyed their backs, got rid of it. Boom. So it's just simple things like that where it's like, well, that movement is really good. It's like, I don't care. I need to understand my scenario, my team. Do Zercher squats, are they amazing? Absolutely. Do my athletes hate them with all their guts? Yes. So do I program them? No. Why? Because I want to make sure that while it is a good adaptation, I need to be the best coach for these athletes and make sure that they understand that I'm here for them. I'm willing to make changes for them, but then still understand, if I do throw them back in the program, that I explain myself, and it's not just like, well, I just, it's a squat movement, I just felt like doing it. Like I said, studying sports science so that I know why we're doing certain things and doing the best I can to explain that allows me to what I feel is be the best volleyball strength coach while still being the best rugby strength, or not the best, sorry, but being a good volleyball strength coach while still being a good rugby strength coach, being a good soccer strength coach, so that I can make sure that they're the best they can be.
I got a bit of almost a summary kind of question. We've talked about the Headmaster Challenge, Spartans in the pros. For anyone who hasn't seen Cole's social media, very, very interactive with the athletes. Everything you post has the teams, the athletes, the coaches in mind, whether that's on the stories, the post, things like that. So there's, like I said, a lot of really good culture building things. And Sparta has this, like I said, it has this atmosphere and this feel that I think you've done a really good job of over the last 4 or 5 years building, because I think even if someone hasn't been there, which I have not visited Sparta myself in person, but I feel like I know what the culture and the atmosphere is like because of some of these little things that you've done that have clearly added up. What's the future of Sparta? Is there anything along those lines that you got working on? It's year 6, so it's like, okay, now I can, maybe add this or add that. I'm just curious if there's something fun like that's coming down the pipe that everyone can look forward to, unless that's secret and we have to wait until the fall semester for that to get revealed.
Actually, it's funny, there are a couple things. Yeah, I don't mind sharing. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is I want to highlight little wins a little bit more. So we have like our big leaderboards, so who has the top sprint on the team, the top jump, those kind of things. But I want to have, something for the little guy. Because if I think back to when I was an athlete, I worked my butt off, but I sure as heck wasn't the fastest or the strongest or those things. So I'm stealing this from Cameron Ross at the U of R. He's a grad assistant there. They have a whiteboard where every time an athlete hits a PR, they sign the whiteboard. And then at the end of the day or the week or whatever it is, I think they take a picture, put it on social media, and then they erase it. So I already have, if you're in Sparta, you'd see I have about 1,000 whiteboards in there with a whole bunch of stuff on it. So I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing another whiteboard, but we have a bunch of mirrors. And one of our mirrors is like right when you walk in, it's where like our cubbies are. And so it doesn't really get used. And so what I'm planning to do is, hey, if you hit a PR, you get to sign the mirror. And then when everybody walks in, they'll get to see your name. And, it's like, oh, hey, so-and-so hit a PR. And once again, it just goes back to that name recognition of when you go to a game on the weekend and you hear someone's name, it's like, oh, wow, hey, that was the person that, was leading the Headmaster's Challenge, or that's the person that, was on this PR board kind of thing. And so that's actually why my Instagram story question yesterday was, do you call it a PR or a PB? Because I wanted to know, do I call it a PB mirror or a PR mirror? Anyway, so
that would have been a great opening question too.
Yeah,
that one, at least Christian
for track
and I being in the track
yeah.
and field world, that one comes up quite a bit because depending on where you're from, it's one or the other.
Yeah. But anyway, it looks like 70% of people say PR, so I'm going with that. But anyway, just simple things like that where it doesn't take any more of my time. It doesn't add any more like stress to the athletes, but it's, hey, if you did something good and you want to be recognized, like put your name up there. And because I know athletes are competitive, and so, we can turn it into, hey, the team that has the most names up there, gets something. Or if you get your name, I know for me, it's like if I wouldn't get my name up there for a week, like I'd be PO'd. So I need to, do that kind of thing. So that's one thing. But yeah, just some other little things as far as like programming. I'm changing things up, but that's probably the big culture piece thing that I'm going to add and see what happens.
I like that idea. I like it. I would have voted for PB board, by the way, Christian. I don't know
Really?
about you. Yeah.
I voted on Cole's
Oh, you did?
Oh, you did?
question,
Okay.
and I am the minority. I say PB, unfortunately.
Yeah. See, it's interesting. So I had a conversation with people, and a lot of them are like, well, I say PR, but if I would never say, oh, that was my personal record. Like they're like, you'd say, oh, it's my personal best. But when you shorten it, like, oh, you just say PR. So at the end of the day, I don't think it really matters, but I'm probably going to go PR because we use Train Heroic for our programming, and I think they use PR. Like when you hit a new personal record, they put a little trophy and it says PR.
Is that an
So
American company?
Probably, yeah. I don't know.
Because I
Most
found
of
it
them
has
are
to be
American.
more. The PR is big in the States, but PB I find more relevant up here.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to
So
look into it. But
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, so just once again, just formalities of things that don't really matter, but for some reason really matter.
No, but I like that's a fun. Yeah. And those are the things that it just engages everybody in the weight room, and I feel like that adds to the, like I said, the culture that Sparta has. So yeah, I think probably the one last thing, Christian, that we probably want to know about the culture in Sparta. There's definitely speakers in there. There's definitely an audio system. I feel like you probably play music. What do you got? What do you got going on in the weight room music wise?
So that's a good
Or
question.
for you
So
personally working out? I'd
yeah.
allow you to answer either or both. Doesn't matter.
Well, me personally, I don't listen to music when I work out. Usually I listen to podcasts. So I actually have listened to you guys while I work out.
Appreciate
But
that.
unless I'm gonna hit like a really heavy set of squats, then with all due respect, I'll kind of turn you guys off and throw on some ACDC or something like that. Because with all due respect, your guys' voices are sweet, but like they don't hype me up at all.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
But yeah, as an Olympic lifter, like I don't like loud music when I'm lifting, so I put on not the stereotypical classical music, but I'll throw on a podcast, which for some people might be worse. But when athletes are in the weight room, so as a Christian school, it's got to be clean, and that's the only kind of thing. So if you're looking up, Da Baby, we can listen to Da Baby, but you got to type in Da Baby clean on Spotify and then play one of his playlists. We listen to a lot of rap music because that just seems to be what everybody listens to. But it depends on the group. Like men's hockey likes kind of that 2000s rock, like Nickelback kind of stuff.
Classic Chell songs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's all
Yeah.
those. It's all those things. Cross country likes country music, so it kind of mixes it up. Big Booty Mix is kind of the soundtrack of Sparta. I would say like that's kind of been, if people like aren't really sure, I just throw on one of the Big Booty Mixes, but usually it's some kind of rap as long as it's clean, which is hilarious because there's times where like I listen to a lot of music in a day and it's all clean, and then I'll maybe throw on the song on my Spotify or listen to it somewhere else where it's not clean, and it's like, holy smokes, like wow, that song is like really bad, or like there's a lot of explicits in
Yeah,
there
you
that could
become
kind of.
like muted to it, but then as soon as you're removed and put back in, you're like, whoa, it's different.
Yeah, it's super. Yeah, especially some songs. It's like, wow, there was a long time where they weren't singing, and now I know why. It's because it wasn't just like, oh, this is a cool interlude. It was like they were just dropping F bombs. Like, so.
Christian, what did you have playing this week when you were lifting, training?
I've discovered a new band recently here. It's almost sort of a tip of the hat to kind of like 90s female punk artists, but with a
Okay.
modern twist. So the band's name's Honey Revenge, and they got some good tunes on them. But it sort of gives you some like 90s, early 2000s punk vibes, but a bit more of a modern flavor to it. So that's been what's on the speakers the last week while I was in Vegas there anyways.
Nice. Nothing wrong with a little punk, little punk energy, right? To kind of get you going.
Well, it's nice. Got a little bit of a spin that's not quite the same. Doesn't have the monotony that like Pop Punk Powerhouse would have, where I've heard these songs 150 times each kind of thing. It's a little bit different. I like it. It's been a good mix. What about you, Tommy? Where are you at right now?
I have not been listening to a lot of my, usual suspects of, the heavy metal type stuff. I'm still, man, I'm always on the synthwave train. I'm always loving whatever Spotify is giving me. Um, so I've been recently going down an FM 84 rabbit hole. They're synthwave kind of band, very digital kind of video game 80-esque sound. Collaborated with a lot of other artists that I've already listened to. So yeah, just good. Just yeah, it's just hey, give me this artist on Spotify and let it roll. So I've been diving a little deeper into their work, and I've been enjoying it. So, you know, just good for doing, I've been lifting to it, but I've been doing just about everything else to it, making food, sitting on the bus, doing work, all that type of stuff. So yeah, loving it. Give me my 80s sounds all the time. You know me. So yeah, cool. I mean, thank you for being on the show. Appreciate the time that you're taking. We know everybody's busy. Every coach is very busy. So super appreciative that you're taking the time and effort to spend some time with us and kind of dive into the culture of Sparta and hearing about your journey and how you've built that up. Thank you for being a listener to the show as well. I guess now you're both a guest and listener. So always appreciate the support from, coaches like yourself and people around the community and everything like that. Where can people find you if they want to contact you, reach out to you, ask you questions, see all the fun stuff you're doing in Sparta? Where can the audience, go and find you?
Yeah, no, my pleasure. It's been awesome chatting. The easiest way to find more about kind of Sparta is just through our Instagram page. So it's at TWU Strength. And that's kind of our S&C one where, yeah, all the stuff we've kind of chatted about, that's where it gets posted. I am on Twitter, which I more just retweet what other cool people are doing. But I'm more than happy to chat via email as well. So the email is cole.hergott, so my name, at twu.ca. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions about, other coaches getting into it, people struggling with culture stuff. Not that I'm, a guru or whatnot, but I think even for me, one of the biggest things was just asking other coaches what they do in certain scenarios just helps you learn. Like I said, like the Headmaster Challenge, I got that from Colin McCausland. I didn't just come up with that. I saw that from somebody else. So if any of the things I've shared have, brought up some ideas, I'm more than happy to walk through how I actually practically implement that. And I'd be more than happy to learn from them as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's excellent. Yeah, thanks again, Cole, and I look forward to the part 2. I'm sure we'll eventually have one day here.
Absolutely. I'd love it.
So yeah, thank you, Cole, for the time. Thank you to everyone listening, everyone supporting. Great to have you along the ride. If there's, feel free to reach out to me and Christian if you have, requests for guests or topics or anything like that. But hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you to everybody, and we'll see you for the next one.